The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow across the marble dining room of the Anderson estate, where my mother's 60th birthday celebration was in full swing. I adjusted my simple black blazer, watching the light catch the subtle Cartier watch on my wrist. A piece worth more than this entire mansion, though none of them knew that yet. "Emily, darling, you finally made it," Mom called out, her voice carrying that familiar note of disappointment. She wore a new Chanel dress, probably purchased just to outshine her country club friends who filled half the room. We were just discussing everyone's recent accomplishments. I took my assigned seat, the furthest from the center of the table naturally. My sister Victoria sat at Mom's right hand, sporting an engagement ring from her investment banker fiancé that she hadn't stopped flaunting all evening. "Did you finally get that manager position at the coffee shop?" Mom asked, cutting into her Wagyu beef. "What was it called again? Something. Stardust Coffee," I replied calmly, checking my phone as another notification lit up the screen. The merger documents needed my final review before tomorrow's announcement. "Still working there?" Dad interjected, swirling his $1,000 wine. "Victoria's James just made junior partner at Goldman Sachs. Now that's a real career." Victoria preened. "The country club just accepted us as full members. They're very selective, you know. Only top-tier professionals." I suppressed a smile, remembering the ownership papers for that very club sitting in my office safe. A small acquisition I'd made last month, though the paperwork wouldn't be public until next quarter. "Emily always loved playing with her little coffee machines," Mom sighed, addressing her friends around the table. "We tried to guide her toward proper business courses in college, but she insisted on studying technology instead." "How's the bus schedule treating you?" Victoria asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "James could recommend some good lease options if you'd finally like to get a car." I checked my watch again. My assistant would be arriving any minute with the final merger documents that needed my signature. The timing had to be perfect. "I manage," I said softly, taking a small bite of beef. The notifications on my phone were increasing. The Asian markets would be opening soon, and my company's stock was already climbing on merger rumors. "We just worry about you, dear," Mom continued, reaching for her champagne. "At 32 you should be established by now. Victoria was already making six figures at your age." Dad nodded sagely. "It's not too late to join my firm. We always need administrative assistance. The benefits are quite good." The crystal glasses clinked as servers refilled champagne around the table. I noticed my mother had instructed them to skip my glass. Apparently, I hadn't earned the right to toast her birthday yet. "Actually," I began, but Victoria cut me off. "James and I just put a deposit down on a summer house in the Hamptons," she announced. "Nothing too extravagant, just 8 bedrooms. You should visit sometime, Emily. When you can afford the train ticket, of course." The table tittered with polite laughter. I felt my phone buzz again. Right on schedule. "I really think it's time you got serious about your future," Mom declared. "Your father and I can't support you forever. That tiny apartment of yours, it's just not appropriate for someone from our family." If they only knew that tiny apartment was the penthouse of a building I owned. But timing was everything, and my assistant would be arriving in exactly 3 minutes with the perfect revelation. "Victoria's wedding next month will be featured in Modern Luxury magazine," Mom continued. "The photographer alone costs more than you make in a year. But don't worry, dear, we're not expecting you to contribute to the celebrations." I dabbed my lips with the napkin, noting the exact moment the dining room doors opened. Right on schedule. My assistant Sarah entered, dressed impeccably in a tailored Armani suit. She carried a sleek leather portfolio that contained the final merger documents for tomorrow's announcement. The acquisition would make headlines across every financial network. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," Sarah said professionally, though we'd rehearsed this moment perfectly. "But Ms. Winters, the board needs your immediate approval for the $4.2 billion merger. The Asian markets open in 20 minutes. The dining room fell silent. Dad's champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the expensive tablecloth. Victoria's fork clattered onto her plate. I stood slowly, straightening my blazer. "If you'll excuse me for a moment. Business calls." The look on their faces was worth every dismissive comment I'd endured all evening. But this was just the beginning. By tomorrow morning, they'd learn exactly who their coffee shop daughter had become. Emily. Mom's voice quavered. What merger? I smiled, taking the portfolio from Sarah. Oh, this old thing. Just a little business matter. Nothing as important as Victoria's wedding, I'm sure. The stage was set perfectly for what would come next. Years of dismissal were about to turn into a very interesting evening indeed. Emily, explain yourself right now, Dad demanded, his face reddening as he tried to maintain control of the situation. Wine was still dripping from the tablecloth where his glass had shattered. I calmly opened the leather portfolio, scanning the merger documents while everyone watched in stunned silence. The terms were exactly as we'd negotiated. Quantum Technologies would be acquiring their largest competitor for $4.2 billion, making us the dominant force in AI security systems. One moment, I said, signing my name with the Mont Blanc pen Sarah provided. The Tokyo Stock Exchange waits for no one. Victoria leaned forward, her designer bracelet clinking against her plate. This has to be some kind of joke. You're a barista. Sarah cleared her throat. Ms. Winters is the founder and CEO of Quantum Technologies. The company she built is currently valued at $12.8 billion. Mom's hand flew to her pearl necklace. That's impossible. Emily never showed any business sense. Actually, I said, handing the signed documents back to Sarah, I showed plenty. You just never bothered to look beyond your own expectations. The room erupted in whispers as my mother's society friends began frantically Googling my name on their phones. I could see their expressions changing as headlines and photos filled their screens. But the coffee shop, Dad stammered. Stardust Coffee? I smiled. I own that too. Along with the entire chain of 300 locations across the country. It was my first acquisition after Quantum went public last year. Victoria's fiancé James, who had been smugly quiet all evening, suddenly sat up straighter. Wait, you're that Emily Winters? The one who developed the quantum encryption protocol. The very same, Sarah confirmed, checking her tablet. Ma'am, the press release is ready for tomorrow's announcement. The Wall Street Journal wants an exclusive interview at 9 a.m. Mom's face had turned an interesting shade of pale. But you live in that tiny apartment. The penthouse of the Morrison building? I raised an eyebrow. I bought the entire building 2 years ago. Real estate is a solid investment, as Dad always taught me. Why didn't you tell us? Victoria demanded, her voice shrill. I took a slow sip of water, savoring the moment. You never asked. Too busy telling me what I couldn't do to notice what I was actually doing. The sound of phones buzzing filled the room as notifications started pouring in. The merger news had leaked in Asia, and the markets were reacting exactly as predicted. Quantum Technologies stock just jumped 18% in pre-market trading, Sarah announced. The board sends their congratulations on the successful negotiation. Dad tried to regain his composure, straightening his tie. Now, Emily, if you needed help with business connections, you should have come to me. I have years of experience. Like when you told me technology was a dead-end career? I interrupted softly. Or when you said women couldn't succeed in tech entrepreneurship. The silence that followed was deafening. Ms. Winters, Sarah interjected, the governor is on line 1. He'd like to discuss the new tech campus we're building downtown. Victoria's fiancé James nearly choked on his wine. The $500 million development project? That's your company. Among other things, I replied. We're also the majority shareholder in the country club you're so proud of joining. I signed off on your membership application last week. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for her champagne glass. But all these years, you let us think. I let you think exactly what you wanted to think, I said, standing up. It was simpler that way. Though I must admit, watching Victoria brag about her country club membership to its owner has been rather entertaining. Sarah's tablet chimed again. Ma'am, your net worth just crossed $14 billion with the stock surge. The room spun to look at me. Gone was the pity in their eyes, replaced by something between shock and fear. My mother's society friends were now frantically trying to catch my attention, their earlier dismissiveness forgotten. Now, if you'll excuse me, I said, straightening my blazer, I have a company to run. Sarah, is my car waiting? The Rolls is out front, ma'am. Though the helicopter is also available if you prefer. Victoria's fork clattered to her plate again. Helicopter. Just a small business expense, I smiled. Nothing compared to your Hamptons house, I'm sure. As I turned to leave, Dad finally found his voice. Emily, wait. Perhaps we should discuss some investment opportunities. I paused at the door, looking back at the table where they'd dismissed me for so many years. I think I've managed my investments quite well without your advice. But thank you for the offer. The room remained frozen as I walked out, Sarah following with the portfolio. But this wasn't just about shocking them, it was about reshaping our entire family dynamic. And phase 3 was about to begin. Sarah, I said as we reached the foyer, implement the next step. She nodded, already typing on her tablet. By morning, they would understand exactly how much their world depended on the daughter they'd underestimated for so long. The following morning I sat in my penthouse office, watching the sun rise over the city skyline I'd helped reshape. Multiple screens displayed financial news channels, all running the same headline: Quantum Technologies' $4.2 billion merger rocks tech world. Emily Winters becomes one of world's youngest female billionaires. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I'd left the birthday dinner. 37 missed calls from Dad, 23 from Mom, and 52 text messages from Victoria. I picked up my phone as Sarah entered with my morning coffee. Your mother is in the lobby, Sarah announced. Along with your father and sister. I smiled, taking a sip of the perfectly brewed coffee from my own chain. Right on schedule. Give them 5 more minutes. The waiting would remind them of all the times they'd made me sit in their reception areas, treating me like an inconvenience. My office occupied the entire top floor of the Morrison building, with views that made the Anderson estate look like a cottage. Also, Sarah continued, the country club board has requested an emergency meeting. Apparently, some members are concerned about the new ownership. How interesting, I mused, straightening the Versace dress I'd chosen for today. Schedule it for next week. Let them sweat a little. Finally, I nodded to Sarah. Send them up. The elevator doors opened moments later, revealing my family looking significantly less polished than usual. Mom's designer outfit couldn't hide her sleepless night, Dad's hands kept fidgeting with his tie, and Victoria's perfect makeup couldn't conceal her reddened eyes. Emily, Mom started, then fell silent as she took in the vast office with its modern art collection and floor-to-ceiling windows. Please sit, I gestured to the Italian leather chairs facing my desk. Sarah, hold all calls except the governor and the Wall Street Journal. Of course, Ms. Winters, Sarah replied, closing the door behind her. Why didn't you tell us? Victoria burst out, her composure cracking. All this time. Would it have mattered? I asked calmly. You were too busy counting the zeros in James's salary to notice I was building an empire. Dad leaned forward. Princess, if we'd known. That's exactly why I didn't tell you, I cut him off. I'm not your princess, Dad. I'm a CEO who built a multi-billion-dollar company while you were telling me to apply for secretarial positions. But we're family, Mom pleaded. We should have been involved. I pulled out a folder from my desk. Speaking of involvement, I have some documents you might find interesting. Their faces paled as I spread out the papers. This is the deed to the Anderson estate. This is the ownership certificate for Dad's law firm building. And this, I slid forward another document, is the financial statement for the trust fund you used to control me with. What are you saying? Dad's voice trembled. Through various subsidiaries, Quantum Technologies now owns all of these properties. Your home, your office, even your summer house. The trust fund has been transferred to a charitable foundation funding tech education for underprivileged girls. Victoria's hands shook. You can't do this. I already have. Don't worry, I'm not evicting anyone. But the power dynamic has changed. No more threats about cutting off my trust fund. No more lectures about proper career choices. No more seated me at the servants' table. Mom's face crumpled. We were just trying to protect you. No, I stated firmly. You were trying to control me. There's a difference. I stood up and walked to the window looking out at the city. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to establish new boundaries. You can keep your lifestyle, your social status, your country club membership. But you'll do it knowing that it all exists because of the daughter you dismissed. The silence in the room was heavy with realization. The merger announcement press conference is in an hour, I continued. You're welcome to attend, as my family. But understand this. Our relationship moving forward will be based on respect, not control. Dad cleared his throat. And if we refuse? Then nothing changes with your daily lives, I shrugged. Except you'll know that every mortgage payment, every office lease, every country club dues payment goes to your coffee shop daughter's company. Victoria stood suddenly. James needs to know about this. James already knows, I smiled. He's been trying to get a meeting with me for months to discuss investment opportunities. Funny how he never mentioned that at family dinners. The morning sun filled the office as my family absorbed their new reality. The power shift was complete, but it wasn't about humiliation. It was about transformation. The car will take you to the press conference if you decide to come, I said, returning to my desk. Sarah will show you out. I have a company to run. They stood slowly, years of superiority stripped away in a single morning. At the door, Mom turned back. Emily, I'm sorry we didn't see you. I looked up from my computer. No, Mom. You saw me exactly as you wanted to. That was your choice. Now I'm making mine. As the door closed behind them, I turned back to the cityscape. On one screen, my company's stock continued to soar. On another, the merger announcement was making global headlines. And on my phone, a text from Victoria. Can we start over? I smiled, picking up my coffee cup. From my own chain, of course. Success wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about becoming strong enough to rewrite the rules of engagement. And now, finally, everyone was playing by my rules.